The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining our webinar on cnPilot E500 user case today. With us, Evert Bopp will be giving a presentation. And so if you have any questions, please type them into the question box on the right, and we will either stop periodically to answer the questions or at least get to them by the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Evert.
Yes, good morning everybody, and thanks for dialing in from wherever you are. I'm at the moment in Ireland in Europe, so I don't know where everybody else is, but yeah, I just wanted to give a short user case on the Cambium cnPilot E500 that we've been using for a while. Just to give you a bit of an introduction about our organization. We're Disaster Tech Lab. We provide emergency communication service primarily in disaster areas across the globe. But we've also been working in Greece in response to the ongoing refugee crisis there. And what we've been doing is providing internet access in the refugee camps there. And while we're doing that, during this project that's been going on for about 17 months now, and previously we worked very closely with Cambium, both in using the hardware and finding the best possible implementation methods. If we can maybe go on to the next slide. Yeah, this just gives a bit of an oversight of what we do in Greece. As I said earlier, we provide internet access in the refugee camps. That's both internet access to the refugees themselves, but also to the various NGOs and responding organizations working in the camps. And then you're looking at organizations ranging from large international NGOs like the UNHCR and the World Health Organization to small local grassroots organizations who, for instance, run small schools or food distribution programs in the camp. So we're providing service to all of the different demographics and users with different needs. We started out in September last year in Greece with 2 refugee camps on the island of Lesvos, which at that point was the center point of the whole refugee crisis, where all the refugees were arriving from Turkey in little flimsy rafts. They were arriving in Lesvos, and the response was only just starting at that point, and we had sent a team down there to see how we could assist. And shortly after arrival, we were approached by the UNHCR, who at that point just about to start building the first 2 refugee camps in Greece, obviously on the island, as that's where all the people were arriving. And obviously those refugee camps needed internet access to improve the communication standards, both for the refugees, local law enforcement organizations also, obviously, and organizations like Frontex and Interpol for screening for the refugees. They had to also use internet access for asylum applications processing and a whole range of different purposes. So we were asked to provide that, and we had to pretty much start building the networks from scratch as the locations for the camps were being built at that point were basically greenfield sites. There were olive orchards, so we had to build the infrastructure down to the holes in the ground where we put the concrete in, where we put the poles in place to put the equipment on. We had to bring internet access on site using Cambium's backhaul point-to-point technology by connecting, for instance, in one occasion, a VDSL line in the nearest city to a refugee camp about 7 miles away. So that's how we brought the internet access on site, and then locally we had to distribute the access using Cambium's Wi-Fi products. And like I said, initially we started up with 2 camps that grew out eventually in first half of this year to 18 camps when there was a agreement made between EU and Turkey to implement a full-fledged asylum application process. So all the refugees had to stay in Greece until the asylum was processed. Hence the large increase in camps. So we took on 18 in total, and that has now shrunk down to about 9 camps. Population-wise, to give you an idea, the 2 camps in on Lesvos alone, about 400,000 refugees transited through those camps in the last 12 months. Obviously, they don't all use the Wi-Fi service that we provided, but it gives you a good indication of the user numbers and statistics you're looking at. And most of the users are using smartphones to access the internet, so about 75–80% at least of the refugees carry smartphones, and then on top of that you have the organizations who work in the camps that all need their internet access for their communication services and their various applications and databases that they run. We used a mix of Cambium devices. We started out initially with the EP and P1000. We used Force 180s. For the longer backhauls, we used the 450, PTP 450 and 650. And recently, this year, we started switching over some of the new cams where we installed the cnPilot E500 from scratch. And in other cams where we initially had installed some of the EP and P1000s, we've upgraded those to cnPilot E500s. The map on the slide gives you an idea of the spread of the various camps. It's just cut out of Greece. Like you see, it's the Attica region, so it's Athens, all the camps in Athens, camps just north of Athens, and then the island of Lesvos is actually not on that map, but that's off to your right where we have another 2 camps. So that gives you a bit of a short summary of the overall picture of what we're doing and the scale of the work we're doing. So if we go on to the next slide now. Yeah, that gives you one of the camps that I've picked out that we've recently completed. It's called a camp called Skaramangas. It's in a location that's part of one of the large ports in Athens. The pictures give you a bit of an idea. This is infrastructurally, it's one of the better camps, as in the refugees are staying in kind of prefab units rather than tents or disused industrial buildings. But this one is actually, it's the second largest camp at the moment in Greece, with about 3,500 to 4,000 inhabitants. And overall, like, the camps range from, some of the camps have only a few hundred, and the largest camp has just over 4,000, which is not a camp that we provide Wi-Fi in. But the 2 pictures give a bit of idea. There's a large concrete surface. It's all flat, so that's, you know, we had no issues with natural obstacles for signal propagation. They had the prefab units. Each unit had an electrical supply in it, which was also a huge benefit compared to some of the other locations where we worked, where there was no power supplied for the unit, so we had to bring that in themselves. In this case, it was pretty much straightforward. A very large concrete space, single-story buildings, and a relative abundance of electrical supply. So, you know, we, aside from the actual scale and the number of users, it was I wouldn't say easy, but it was a pretty straightforward design. The next slide shows you an idea of the camp layout. Just click through there. That shows you a bit of an idea how we did it. Just going back one slide there. I think we just gone a bit too far. Yeah, that's the one. You see the map. If you see at the top right where all the red lines converge, that area is actually the administrative area. We brought in 2 DSL lines, which was all that was available on that location. We bundled the 2 lines using a MikroTik router, and from that point we then had to distribute the Wi-Fi signal or the internet access throughout the camps. So you can see where the lines go. They terminate all in different locations, and the little rectangles are basically the small prefab units that you saw in the previous slide. So what we did in the central point, we put in from the wired router, we put in 2 Force 180 devices, one pointing up to the kind of to the right to your kind of 10 to 12 o'clock, those 3 locations, and another one pointing down to the anything from kind of the 8 to the 7 o'clock area, to put in the connect then to the basically respective nodes in the camps. You see a bit of scale of the layout on the rectangle kind of to the right, the larger one with the circle in it. That contains, for instance, a few soccer fields, so that gives you an idea of the scale that we had to cover. Going back to the slide that's now showing, it shows you a bit of an idea how we actually installed the equipment. We had the poles where the lady is standing on. Is actually standing on one of these residential units, the prefab units. We had the pole there. There's a small box, obviously, for the electrical supply, and then you see the E500 unit and a Force 180. So we use the Force 180s for the links from each node to the central point where the internet backhaul came on site, and then locally we distributed the signal using the E500s. It worked perfectly with powering the units. Obviously the E500 has an auxiliary port, so we can power the Force 180 from the E500, obviously all using power over Ethernet, so that made it a lot easier. It's and then on the small close-up you see the installation of the two units, so it forms a really nice package that way if you have to cover like a campus site or a large area where you have one central location with where the backhaul that comes on site, and you have no cabling throughout the site, but you need a number of locations across the site need to be connected. This has proven itself to be a very good solution by combining the two units. Now, if we click to the next slide, just give you a view advantage. It shows you a picture again, shows you a close-up of the two units and the power box. Now, the advantage of using the E500, it allows us to use both, to serve both users with 802.11b legacy devices and the newer 802.11ac devices. What basically happened is a lot of the refugees still carry all the devices, and a lot of them will still work on 802.11b, so we need to provide that. But we also are dealing with NGOs and other organizations, local authorities and people with more up-to-date IT infrastructures who need to basically be given the capability or be provided with a service that allows them to use their up-to-date equipment with the higher throughput speeds, etc. And it also allows us to split out the different services, because what we did, for instance, is the refugees were provided with an unsecured service or an unencrypted network, because obviously user management in that kind of environment is near to impossible, so you just have to provide them just with an open network, while the various NGOs and the various other organizations for their own reasons prefer to have an encrypted network, so we had to set separate SSIDs for that. And then having the dual radios also allows you to split it out in kind of service level as well as encrypted or non-encrypted. I'll show you some graphs later on in the presentation where it shows you the level of legacy devices compared to the newer devices, but we'll get to that in a point. Another advantage was the increased capacity both in throughput as well as client ratios. What we've throughput speaks for itself. Obviously, using 802.11ac, you get have a huge increase in throughput. You have the better channel options than 802.11b. And what we, for instance, also experienced with some of the camps where we, at the start of our deployment increase, where we installed the EPMP 1000s, which were in themselves are good devices, but you know they're a bit older models, so we were kind of in those situations. Those units were topping out at 100 users each, so we had some challenges there. And by upgrading those to the E500, we were able to handle much more users per device. Which obviously, if you're working in an environment like this where you have 3,500 to 4,000 refugees and a few hundred NGO workers running around on the same small location, you need to have you need higher capacity per access point. Another thing that is very good, we haven't permanently used the mesh option, but the option is obviously there with the E500, and we've tested it and it works quite well. And for instance, in our kind of work that we do, having a device that can handle mesh has the advantage that and we can kind of in some occasions replace the current setup where we kind of have a hub and spoke infrastructure where we do the point-to-point via the Force 180s and then the E500 for local distribution. But with the E500s we also have the option that if the environment requires us to do such, we can actually use them in as mesh devices where they just obviously create their own network. It has also the advantage if you have enough device density that with unreliable power sources, which we also quite often deal with, that if one device goes down, that it's a self-healing network. So that's a great benefit for us and people who work in similar scenarios, or people who install, or organizations install ad hoc networks or similar things. And then the last point is the integration with cnMaestro. Now cnMaestro in itself has proven a godsend for us because we work with a variety. We're a largely volunteer organization, so we work with a rotating group, and we do a lot of our assistance also.
Hey Evert, we actually have a few. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We actually have a few questions, if you don't mind answering them. One is, hi, is cnPilot 500 Wi-Fi certified by the Wi-Fi Alliance?
Good question. Quite honestly, I would have to check. I think that somebody from Cambium is better placed. Hello?
Yeah. Hi, this is Chetan. We are right now undergoing Wi-Fi Alliance. This is Chetan. I'm the product manager for Cambium cnPilot. Our Wi-Fi equipment is undergoing testing at the Wi-Fi Alliance labs, and we expect to shortly have the certification either by late Q4 or early Q1.
All right, so there you go. Thank you, Chetan. The next question is, how many devices are connected at any one time?
It varies. The most we've seen so far is, if I recall correctly, is 130 devices concurrently at any one time, and I mean obviously that fluctuates, and the least we've seen is about 40 to 45 depending on time of day and activity. But they've been easily handled that compared, for instance, to the ePMP 1000, which pretty much topped out at about 100 users per device.
All right, that's it for the questions. Sorry. So let's we can move on with the presentation.
Okay. No, I'm just mentioning about cnMaestro that it's such a multifaceted tool. It lets us monitor our network remotely, but it's great help with actually the installation of the actual network because we have, like I said, we have a rotating group of volunteers on the ground doing work, but we also have a number of people within the organization that are kind of on an ongoing basis providing technical assistance, and cnMaestro allows them obviously to do that remotely, help with configuration of the devices. It's great help with, like I said, monitoring the performance of the network. It allows us to tweak certain settings depending on changing circumstances. So it's pretty much indispensable, and having the close integration between the E500 and the cnMaestro is just a huge benefit. And I think anybody who's worked with cnMaestro itself, or with the combination of cnMaestro and the E500 will agree on that. Now if we go on to the next slide, there's a couple of slides with some screenshots from cnMaestro, so you can kind of see some of the things that it allows you to do. This is a screenshot from when we were at the point when we were just starting the installation in Scaramanga's camp. What it does show you, it shows the number of E500 units installed. At that point there were 3 live. It shows you the clients connected. It shows throughput, RF quality per on the 2.4 and the 5.1 gig split out. Same with the channel distribution. It shows you very clearly, and then obviously the overall number of wireless clients. So it lets you, gives you quite a clear oversight of those situations. And then up the top, of course, the alarms gives you an overview. If there's any issues, what alarm has popped up. The next slide drills down some more into the individual access point. This is one of the access points that we installed at that point. That's a couple of weeks ago. It shows the uptime, the number of clients connected, again the channel distribution. It shows you also on a nice little Google map the exact location, so that gives you an idea. Obviously, if you have multiple, it works the same with, for instance, the hotspots as it does with the point-to-point links, so the subscriber modules, but it shows you the location. It can show you also if there's any links, where the links are between those devices. And then it gives you the device-specific information, so what kind of device you have, MAC address, IP address, and then on the right, then it gives you the actual radio details, where it gives you the client distribution, channel distribution, DBMs, anything you basically want to know. You can access from pretty much anywhere in the world where you have internet access. Now, next slide shows you some more information about the same access point again. Now, the graph on the left shows you the number of wireless clients over and basically the previous week. But what's interesting there, if you see the two different shading colors, the higher number here is the 2.4, so the legacy devices, which I mentioned earlier, which is mostly in these cases are refugees connecting, and then the more darker shading, which you see is substantially lower number, is the 5 gigahertz, and our research and experience has shown that's pretty much people working for NGOs and NGOs, local authorities, people like organizations like Frontex and Interpol who handle border security and refugee registration. And you see, unlike what you will see in a lot of other networks currently, the number of legacy devices are much higher. I mean, I know from obviously from people I talked to, from experience of people in network engineers, network integrators in kind of, let's call it modern networks like enterprise networks, you would probably see the reverse, or you would hardly see any legacy devices in the environment that we work. The reverse is true. So that's why it's great having the E500 being able to serve both and serve them with a sufficient of quality. Now on the right, the graph shows you the throughput. Now obviously that spikes, which kind of varies on different circumstances. Sometimes it's the backhaul that's not that fluctuates, which unfortunately is the case in Greece, where sometimes the throughput speed on the backhaul drops. We have also instances in this is lesser a case, but some of the networks were installed where the point-to-point links were mounted on structures that weren't 100% stable, so like fences or something like that, was the only option for us to mount. So sometimes the link quality would drop a bit, and then the throughput would drop. And obviously it's also, as you can see, I mean, it tops out at 1.37 Mbps, which is not a huge speed, but you need to consider that we work in an environment where it's not only best effort counts, but also an environment where the people and the organizations that we provide a service to have nothing else. So any kind of connectivity that we can offer is a huge improvement for the user. So that's why it kind of explains that the speeds here are obviously less than you would see in an enterprise environment, but that's not so much device specific, that's just related to the circumstances that we work in. And then we're going to go through to, I think, what's nearly my last slide at this point. Just click through there. Yeah, this is, for instance, if you see an example, what the subscriber modules, which is in this case, I know the webinar is about the E500, but just to show you what cnMaestro can do. Like on the left, you see kind of the network tree. You can click down, and one of the things that it also lets you monitor here is where the subscriber module, like for instance, the signal level. So it shows you a few drops, but that's obviously a lot of external influences there. You can monitor it over different time periods, ranging from a week to a 4-hour slice. It also lets you click at the top of the graph, the throughput, retransmission sessions, and you can pretty much drill down to any kind of aspect, any kind of detail you want to know about your device or your network performance. It lets you monitor individual user down to device and level, and pretty much gives you full control over the network. So that's why the combination of the E500 and the cnMaestro has been is such a success for us, and I'm sure for pretty much anybody else who is using it. Now the next slide is actually our last, so I'll take some questions if there are any at the moment. It just gives the information if you're interested. I stuck it in here at the end kind of to give ourselves a bit of a plug, but I'm assuming that's okay. It's just if you're interested in what we do, you know, it gives you the idea how you can get involved, or if you insisted, and it has a link to a website. I don't know if there's any questions at the moment.
Not any extra ones, no.
Okay, so how are we doing time-wise?
Evert, this is Chetan again. I have one
Yes.
question. What material are the prefab units made of?
Sorry?
What material are the prefab housing units made of?
Sorry, can't hear. The connection is a bit, I'm sorry, a bit, because I'm out in the field, the connection isn't great, but can you just repeat the question again?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, yes.
One of the questions I had someone ask me here was what material are the prefab units that the refugees are housed in? What are they made of?
Oh, right, yes, sorry.
And do they get Wi-Fi?
That's a good. Yeah, it's a good question. And the units are a combination of plastic and actually the dreaded foil back insulation at the inside, in between the kind of double wall structure. Obviously, that impedes the signal propagation to a certain extent, but like because the units are installed on top of these prefab units, the units, obviously the unit that's surrounding it, so about, I mean, we were looking earlier at the site map, but for a good 50 to 100 yards in, they have access in the buildings, in the structures, so that's it's of a fairly acceptable level. Like, I mean, obviously it affects the signal to a certain extent, but it doesn't block it completely.
Ah, okay, thank you. I also have another follow-up question. In the installations, we noticed that the E500 and the EPMP 1000 are put up quite close to each other. Is there not interference between those two units? Have you had to deal with anything in terms of separation and how far apart you had to put the backhaul and the Wi-Fi unit together? Yeah,
no, we didn't really have any issues, and obviously, like if you look at the picture of the way they're installed, the kind of direction of the signal is kind of away from each other. Now, obviously, some of the signal bleeds over and a bit to the rear, but not of a level where we actually have found any performance degradation. So it hasn't been an issue for us, at least.
Thank you. Andrew, back to you. Andrew, are you there?
This is Colin, but yes.
Sorry.
So if that's the end of the presentation, if we don't have any more questions, Evert, is that right? Is that the end of your presentation?
That's the end. That was the last slide there. So.
All right. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us then. This webinar will be on our community forums soon, and so if you want to ever watch it for, to see more about what Evert does, or if you missed anything, you could access it there. So thank you all for coming. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you.